Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. Today, man, a couple of privileges going on today. One, it's warm and it's daytime, so you guys don't have to sit and watch a nighttime episode. And then I get to use this beautiful metal punch that one of our listeners sent over. So, to Sylvia, thank you so much. This thing is like a dream. It's one of these punches that a person will have their entire life because it's made out of steel. Self-cleans. This is better than the other one I borrowed from a buddy of mine. But I thought today there was a bit of a conversation on the Facebook page about Planet X, and I did a tremendous amount of research in that conspiracy theory as it existed, I believe, in 2011 and 2012. And I even had a father-son call me at one point, very concerned that this was real. And it was kind of cool. You know, the dad was trying to support his son in a particular theory, and so he's like, well, let's call my buddy Mark and we'll have a conversation. I had to do some fresh up on it, and so I went to Wikipedia. And the funny thing was the theory had completely dissolved away from all of the animations and very specific theories that I was reading about, 8 years ago, whatever it was. So let me recap what I last knew about the Planet X theory, and then we'll talk about kind of where it is today, because it seems to be dismantled today, which is really interesting. So you have this woman in 1995 says that she's channeling people from Nibiru through an implant in her brain, which begs the question, how would you get an implant in your brain that's compatible with the Nibiru people if they're in orbit around our solar system and its mini solar system, and they're so far away they can't get to us? So who gave you the implant? Did they take a little George Jetson UFO to her house and go, okay, we're going to put this in your brain of all people? Not a totally credible human being in the world that everybody knows, but this total random stranger is going to be super special, right? In fact, channeling has always been the way that this story has come about, and the same thing with Lemuria, Atlantis, in typical form, although Atlantis has some romanticized texts, lamenting to its existence. But anyway, the way I heard the theory explained, and this is how it came to me when there was caution and concern in my friends' voices, which was that there is a mini solar system comprised of at least two objects, which I never heard it elaborated beyond that point, but there's a separate sun called Nemesis. Of course, it has to be called Nemesis, right? I got a little plane, a big jet. It's overcast, so I can't see where the hell anything is. So the way I've heard it described, again, 8 years ago, was that it was a mini solar system comprised of a sun called Nemesis, which should just right away sound pretty fictional to you. And it has a planet circling it called Nibiru. Nibiru is an Earth-like planet. Now, before you get into the theory that exists today that this thing was supposed to come, careening into our solar system, and because Nemesis is a star and Nibiru is this Earth-like planet, a Gaia-class planet, that because it has enough mass, it would shake up all the ethereal orientations, or I should say gravity orientations, and throw everything off. Huge collision, end of the world sort of thing. So that's where it currently exists today, but they now are separating Nemesis and Nibiru from each other in different theories. But if you go to what it was prior, it is a civilization that lives on Nibiru who has a ecological crisis, maybe an economical one too, but as an ecological crisis that their atmosphere must have gold in it. Super duper heavy ass particles supposed to be floating up there. Okay. And they need to get as much gold as they can possibly get and Earth just happens to be a gold haven. So, a long time ago, when man was engineered to exist, we were engineered out of the indigenous ape-like, hominids, creatures, into Homo sapiens sapien by these folks. Because their solar system was inside our solar system, and when Nibiru got extremely close to Earth, they jumped over with whatever spacecraft they had to get to Earth, quickly rounded up and assessed all of the indigenous life, especially the hominids, then developed a DNA sequencing technology to move hominid to Homo sapiens sapien, obviously closer to whatever form they are. Then, after translating the DNA from an absolute primitive, ape hominid, they gave us intelligence. And then we started being born with the ability to learn. And then they immediately taught us how to, mine gold out of the ground. And, when Antarctica research was being rediscovered, and it's prior to Flat Earth as far as I know, but when that was going through, people were saying that the gold was being mined out of Antarctica and, of course, Africa and all these other locations. We got plenty of it in the United States. But it was all being shipped to this planet. Then the planet and the Nemesis star swing out of rotation from our solar system, and now they are on the backside of wherever we are, negating the fact that if we are in a heliocentric situation, we're circling. Flat Earth, this makes no sense at all. But for the sake of this conversation, we're not going to mention Flat Earth much. Now, let's look at some logic here. If a civilization needed gold in their atmosphere, and they have the technical capability of jumping from their planet to ours, and of genetically engineering organic matter, the infinitely complex and barely understood protein patterns that dictate the nucleic acid chains that make up our DNA, and consciousness, and all these other things, right? If they're that smart, then fusion to make gold should be extremely easy, man. Extremely easy. Now, why don't we have that on Earth? Well, one, we don't have the ability to engineer a dog into a talking human person thing. At least we don't have it in the public eye. But the reason why we don't mess around with creating gold bars out of straw, the old alchemy theories back in the day, was that we would upset the entire apple cart of monetary ecosystems. If we just had tons and tons of gold, we would have to value something else. Yeah, I've seen diamonds in documentaries created in, compressors, cubic zirconias. Again, like I said, they're real diamonds, but they're flawless, and so real diamonds have flaws in them, and that's what you want to buy, which is just really odd. You try to go to the flawed diamonds and try to get the most perfect diamond, but if you actually make a perfect diamond, nobody wants that because it was inexpensive to create, and therefore you don't love your spouse. But if we had to get gold made out of anything, we would figure it out. We would atomically figure it out, even if it took us more power to make the bar of gold than the bar of gold is worth. If our atmosphere was going to go tits up and we were going to die, it wouldn't matter, right? We would work around the clock. Everyone would be pedaling bikes to make the amount of electricity that we need, right? So, that theory sounds just as frivolous as could possibly be. And here's my concern, because we need to talk about, I could probably create an episode on it, but there's probably not enough information to make it truly interesting. But we have this sort of mezzanine of, I would say, bullshit. I'm just going to call it fucking bullshit. It is bullshit. These motherfuckers who say they can channel people and channel things, they are the absolute inception point of most of these bullshit conspiracies that cause a lot of angst. And we're going to talk about how much angst Planet X theory caused, because it was huge. You had family members emailing astronomers asking them if they should kill their children, should they kill their pets, should they kill themselves, all because this chick in 1995 needed to be important. But she's only part of the problem, because everyone who wants to be involved with something special jumps on that channeling bandwagon and validates this crazy. Channeling? Okay. Do we have any evidence that anybody can channel anything? No. If you want to see the most laughable bullshit theories of people claiming that they can talk to aliens, go look at channeling videos with people who claim to be talking in alien talk and bringing in leaders from around the galaxy and all this other stuff. To my knowledge, there's not a single channeling situation that has turned into anything concrete and hardcore. But it is this mechanism of total delusion. It's like you have people with giant balls that go, I'm going to say I'm channeling this stuff, or I'm going to take a random piece of metal and I'm going to jam it in my body, and then 6 months later I'm going to have some guy dig it out and we're going to say it's an alien implant. But then you have people that need to be special, aren't creative, don't have the balls to create something by themselves, even, or say that they've got this theory by themselves, that usurp other people's crazy. And here we go. Now, in my, you ask why that would occur, and the answer is always entertainment. There's this, I forgot what they call it, but there's I don't even know if you call it a conspiracy, but there's this thing that went around the internet telling kids to commit suicide, right? And it was this weird doll girl from one of the movies, kind of a strung together slapstick thing of a bunch of different things put together. I forgot the name of it, but I don't give a shit. But it's trying to get kids to kill themselves. Some kids did kill themselves. So someone started this conspiracy online to tell kids to kill themselves, and supposedly the FBI has got no method of finding these people, which should probably tell you where the source came from. But it surfaces and a bunch of kids kill themselves, and then it goes away, and then it surfaces and a bunch of people kill themselves. Now you might think that's a Darwin test. Why not just let these kids kill themselves? If they're that impressionable, they deserve it. I don't think so. Because you have little kids who don't have any defense mechanism. They have that one finite moment with their parent that frustrates them, and then all of a sudden someone teaches them they can retaliate. Not good. So you might think Planet X is a fun little thing to play around with until people start thinking about, doing a Jim Jones Kool-Aid party and murdering their entire church. What about the Heaven's Gate people? I think that's what they were called, right? The whole cult of people that were in a house. They all made websites for a living. They all drink a Kool-Aid, wearing their sneakers. Where I think the leader left. He didn't kill himself. Everyone thought he did, but he didn't. We have these sickos. But now the other thing, the reason why I got the phone call from this father-son team was that there was a little extra sort of truth sprinkled into the theory. And it was that NASA and a few other organizations that sell doom and gloom, they're trying to get their budgets renewed. And one of the things they always use, and it comes around every fucking budgetary cycle of NASA and JPL and other little outfits that supposedly contribute to this overall data pool, is the idea that there's going to be a meteor shower and we're going to, have an Earth cataclysm impact and we're all going to die. Okay. Again, we've been watching the moon for a really long time with optics. We have not seen anything registerable hit the moon since we've been looking at it. What we see is plasma eruptions directly in the center of craters, because the crater was invented by a plasma injection from the interior of the moon. And so it's still a weak spot. If you were to able to do a cross-section of a crater in the moon, you would see the volcanic tear from the plasma underneath. Right? So it's coming up through. That's why it's pure white every single time it occurs. And that's why you can see the spibbles of it, just like a volcano. If someone films it really close, you see the center of it and you see the spibbles on the side. Very easy to look up. They keep selling us and reselling us this cataclysmic event that got rid of the dinosaurs, which is a meteor impact in the northern tip of South America. That is an eruption from the inside of the earth that popped out, and it probably happened so long ago, dinosaurs and life itself was probably not here. We're just overgrowing this huge pop mark, just like the moon has a ton of them. That's why all craters are perfectly round, because it's an eruption from the inside, and it's perfectly unified when it pops on all sides, which just makes it completely round. If it's a meteorite, you're going to get a bunch of ovals and all kinds of other things occurring. Now, does that mean that rocks on the moon don't tumble down a hill every once in a while? Sure they do. Another thing pops, a rock's sort of in there, and it just goes rolling down a hill, and you'll see these little rolls on the surface of the moon. But if it's hitting the moon at 35,000 miles an hour, it ain't going to just roll down the side. You're going to have a huge elliptical poof mark, which doesn't happen. But right around the time, I think it's about 2011, because we're holding on meteorites. So I get this phone call, and it's my good friends, father and son team, calling me up because this Planet X thing is being theorized is happening, I believe in I can't even remember, it was April of a particular year. NASA's running around with their doom and gloom crap, trying to raise their budgets. You know, I have a whole episode about NASA selling doom, and the whole game is you need them. That is what they want you to believe. That's the optic of the PR firm, is you need them. Okay. Because you sure as hell don't need an international space station. You sure as hell don't need probes on Mars. You don't. We need human beings to have the capability of leaving this planet. That is all that we need. And until NASA can prove that they can pull that off, hey, you're just a little skunk works research project off to the side. But my friends were concerned because there was a whole set of photographs of Obama, visiting, shelters in the Midwest. There was all these articles coming out of Europe talking about how they were bracing for impacts. Now, whether or not any of this is true, you've got all these crazy-ass websites that are just nutty fucking URLs that have no sense in anything. I'm sorry to get emotional, but I just find that this is like, a few of us people that have run or lived in towns, lived in small towns, eventually rose up to be part of the executive branch of the town to protect our people and to serve our people. We see these snake oil salesmen come in and we run them out of town. Now, if the snake oil guy is selling hope and happiness in some faux form, we might look at it and go, oh, okay. But NASA's selling doom and gloom, and Planet X is selling the end of the world. Getting parents literally to think about whether or not they should kill their kids and their pets. And they said that, and again, I believe more of the private accounts of this, more than I would believe maybe NASA accounts of this, but most of the documentation about this talks about individuals getting bombarded with people asking questions about the end of the world. All because of what? When I used to go to Barnes & Noble all the time, just before the 2012 thing, because remember, 2012 was supposed to happen at the end of the year, so a lot of things happened in that year, misinterpreting the Mayan calendar. You got Mayan calendar experts and people who can actually read the language going, well, the part that says the year, where it indicates perhaps an end of an epoch, a switchover, is it's terribly damaged, but two, it's way in the 4000s. It's like the 4600 range of the years, according to what? Well, what year is it now? It's a Christ year. It's this arbitrary fictional story that dictated what year it was. And you think the Mayans are actually using that calendar? Or that you have some translation between their calendar and our calendar? No way. You can't discover a race right in the middle of something and then try to date it and backdate it. Because your only question you could ask it would be, what year is it today according to this calendar, and then try to reverse engineer one way or the other. But the people who made it are long gone. So the best you have is an interpretation. So that opens it up for all these nutbags to come and make a bunch of money. But what was happening at Barnes & Noble? I don't know how many books came out that were predicting doom and gloom 2012 crap. Tons, dozens of them, right? Now, for anyone who's aware that it's entertainment, you're just reading it to have fun, and hey, more power to you. I have no concern about those individuals. But the last thing I need is, I'm with my family, I'm going to some public place, and there's some nutbag who thinks that it's their imperative to help me in my life because they believe in some fictional thing. Now, I don't think Planet X got to that level in our world, but people were making these phone calls. So anyway, these individual scientists and astronomers came out and said, we're getting flooded with all these calls and emails and requests. NASA claimed that they had a bunch of this. And then you have this issue of, okay, the Planet X thing is a real societal phenomenon for some people. And again, to explore it, to research it is great. Okay, I have no criticism of that. But to adopt it and rush out and be crazy with it, I'm hoping that there's some iterary step between that point before you go crazy. But so NASA knows, believe me, they knew that this Planet X theory was gaining steam on the internet. People were concerned, and they also knew that there was a 2012 movement going on. But they never pulled out the optic of, we're going to have a bunch of cataclysmic meteorites hitting Earth. Again, it's never happened in recorded history, and we've never had it be a close call. And why is it that we still have these reports that things are coming extremely close to Earth, and no amateur astronomer posts the video on YouTube of this thing occurring, of this thing going woof right past Earth? Only NASA can see NASA's conspiracies. You realize that? It's like a they live pair of glasses. Whoa, I can't see it. We'll put these glasses on. Oh, there it is. There's all the doom and gloom and the reason why NASA should get a ton of money. I think channeling, people who claim they can channel at this out of this world level, okay, you might make a joke of saying, look, I listen to the spirits. I mean, I don't even need to say it's a joke, but you might feel like, look, I can listen to influences of the universe. I always talk about that, right? That's a little bit different. Listening to inspiration here and there. I need to write a movie, and so I'm watching the movie inside my mind. I'm sneaking in the back of the theater, like I always say. A lot of musicians say I listen to the music and it's finished in my mind and all I do is translate it. Well, that's how, the lead singer of Kansas wrote Wayward Son. He dreamed the song, and then their album is finished. He rushes back to the studio and says, everyone get back to your instruments. I got this thing, and you have one of the greatest rock and roll songs out of the 70s ever written. That's not what I'm talking about. Channeling people say that they're actually, releasing their body to another person's body, their spirit, right? And so they're being totally possessed. There's this goofball dude who claimed he was bringing in some alien from somewhere in the universe, and they filmed him. And he sits in a chair, and he talks like this. He talks like a 1950s alien, in some movie. Because how old was the guy? Well, he was probably in his 60s or 70s, and he grew up in the 50s. And so for him, an alien talked like an alien from a sci-fi movie in the 50s. Or some radio program like X-1. In fact, X-1 has episodes that sound exactly like this guy. But what's he want in the end? He wants to get his rocks off. He wants to be popular. And so instead of taking his theories and writing a great piece of fiction and actually making some money and just being another Ray Bradbury, he goes into this lazier technique of just telling people he's channeling an alien. And of course, you have this trough of human beings that want to also be special by knowing someone special. It's like the life of Brian, right? He takes his shoe. He's mistaken for being Jesus. He keeps trying to tell everybody, I'm not Jesus. Stop calling me Jesus. Stop following me around. He takes his shoe and throws it at the guys and tells them to fuck off. And then they pause for a second. You think he's done it. You think he's totally cleared these people of believing in him. And the only response he gets back was, well, how should we fuck off, oh Lord? You know? And he's like, oh my God. And then they pick up the shoe and they go, he wants us to take off one of our shoes. And they all take off one of their shoes. You know, these people who want to believe are dangerous for society. They really, really are. It's okay to know that you want to believe. We have that famous poster of the UFO and it says, I want to believe. It's in the credits of X-Files. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with letting yourself believe something as long as you're not creating hysteria in society. We have rules why you don't scream fire in a movie theater, right? Well, incubating up Planet X to a point where people are wanting to potentially kill themselves, it's like, okay, you're screaming fire in a movie theater, all right? But now one of the other theories about Planet X that gets people doing research and thinking that this is real, and there may be something to what I'm about to say, so I don't mean to discount this, but it doesn't validate the whole other hocus pocus of some alien race coming to Earth, genetically engineering human beings, making us dig out gold so they can take it back with them. Again, making gold from scratch and genetically engineering Homo sapiens sapien. The gold thing is a lot easier than the other thing. So if you believe they have that other technology, then the whole story is bunk automatically. But now there's this, and I've seen many videos of this. There's this theory that we have two suns. And it's sort of like a binary system where the suns are kind of around each other. There's even a theory of a third sun, which is black, and that is responsible for the eclipses that we see. All right. Now there's all these videos of people filming the sun on the horizon. It's specifically only on the horizon that I've ever seen. You correct me if you've seen something different. But they believe they're seeing two suns. All right. This is where we can actually bring in both models of the Earth, and both models could explain a little bit of this sort of mirage effect. Let's go for flat Earth first. It's kind of fun. So flat Earth is the theory that we live inside of a snow globe. It's flat. And the sun and the moon are 3,200 miles up. They're chasing each other in a circle. Now, the weird thing is that they are not in complete sync with each other, right? So they're never quite perfectly on the other side of each other the entire time. And so my theory is, why don't they ever bump into each other? It seems like that would be the case. But anyway, we have absolute proof that when you take the scientific index of our atmosphere and the refraction, which means how light bends inside of the atmosphere of Earth, you literally just ask NASA, what is the refraction rate of the atmosphere on Earth? Then you get a lens that does that refraction. You can put it on a flat table, a fairly large table. You can put an iPhone on one side, it looks through the lens, and then you can have a piece of paper, like an L-shaped piece of paper with the sun on one side. And as you pull it back away from the lens, by God, you see the sun set on a false horizon. It's not setting. When you look around the lens, the sun's still on the piece of paper. It's still off the surface of the table, but because of refraction, it's distorting it to look like it's setting. That's one of the best piece of evidence, is that maybe you're not on a ball. Maybe you are on a flat disc or some sort of concave disc or whatever the thing is. But what's the theory for... Okay, I should say also, too, the other theory is that if you're looking at the sun setting in a desert, the sun gets super small like a pin light and disappears. If you're watching the sunset 3 miles from me on the Pacific Ocean, it's this gigantic ball of fire that's setting on the ocean itself, which is more like the lens theory, because there's so much water vapor coming off the ocean that it's doing a magnifying effect on the sun as it goes away from our line of sight. That's pretty brilliant. Again, the table experiment it's brilliant regardless if it's the truth or not. That's all I got to say. I love it. But now here's the thing with seeing the two suns. And what they're saying is one of them is is Sol, S-O-L, the M1 sun out there that we've been raised with, and the other one is Nemesis. Now, what's interesting about the Nemesis, this dual sun thing that people see, and again, they filmed it inside cameras, and the cameras are all different. So if it's some optical illusion inside the camera, it's got to be, that can't be the case. It's got to be an optical illusion outside the camera. But the other thing is that Nemesis is somehow an M1 class star. It is exactly the same size as our sun, because every time they see it mirrored and duplicated, it is the exact same size as the sun, and it's usually considered to be behind the sun. Now again, if you guys have seen something different, please link the video. But I think in their theory of the binary system, you would want to have two objects pretty much the same size, but I don't think it would be remotely difficult to see the two suns all year round if there are two suns and they're orbiting each other. If they're not orbiting each other, then they'd be crashing into each other. So there's a big issue with that. But what if there's an anomaly in the thickness of the atmosphere that creates an echo of light? And for that brief second that you think you're seeing two suns, you're merely seeing light get split, and it duplicates an edge of some sort, and you think you're seeing one. What's interesting is that all the videos I've ever seen, and we spent probably a good month at my smoke lounge tracking the multiple sun thing and watching every single video we could find on an 80-inch, or not 80-inch, excuse me, a 60-inch 4K television, and nothing was totally conclusive. You're looking at this thing going, oh, I kind of see it, when it's kind of, you're still in a kind of theory. So the other one would be to rewind the theory that I was initially told, and again, I'm not hearing this in the official news about the theory as it was later redocumented. And some of you might think, well, look at that. They erased most of the theory in Wikipedia because it's true. I don't know. I didn't follow Wikipedia back in those days. But the original theory was, again, you have this teeny tiny sub-solar system. And I think I've heard the other planets named in that solar system as well. But Nibiru is the only Gaia-class planet with life on it, as I remember it. But there's this idea that somehow this has existed for, billions of years or what have you, at least hundreds of millions of years. And technically speaking, it would have to have been formed the same time our solar system's formed. What other event would have occurred, And so it has been, coming through our solar system. And again, there is a tremendous amount of space. Again, I always try to remind everybody, look, every time you see a solar system model of our solar system, where you have like the sun's here, and then you have little pieces of metal that hold up all the planets, they're showing you a proportional distribution, except the sun, of where these planets are from the sun's center. But all the shapes of the planets are completely exaggerated in size. I used to mention this a lot in episodes. This is a good time to mention it again. If I had a basketball in my hand right now, which is I think 10 inches across, its diameter, and that was the sun, then the Earth is about 36 feet that way, and it's about a third of the size of a period on a piece of paper. And the Pluto would be, I think, 500 miles from the North Pole. And, infinitesimally teeny tiny. That's how much space is in our solar system. So there is a lot of room for another teeny tiny third of a period to come through, and you may even have enough room for a 10-inch ball to come, careening through. But because of the ethereal winds, which make gravity waves, it creates negative pressure in ether, just like water and bubbles. If this thing came sailing through at any previous point, everything would go cockeyed. Everything would go crazy. As well, you might even have, and again, these trajectories that people made up on these YouTube videos. Again, they're trying to do their best estimation, I think, based on this channeling, certified truth from this woman in 95, right? But this thing is coming through, and you would think that it would easily swallow up Venus, it would easily swallow up Mercury, because you're just going to have it collide. It's going to come through, it's going to suck these things over. Hell, even Earth probably would have been sucked over towards it. But the idea was that the way they theorize this, and again, it's just interesting theory that's been turned into a valid story. What if we had a small solar system that's in some really, super wide orbit with ours? So it goes way out into space, and then it comes back every 60,000 years or whatever it is. It cannot have occurred, I guarantee you, within the years that man has been drawing things on cave walls, because we would have had a really bad year as this stuff starts going past us, I would imagine. But here's where I think that these theories get a little frustrating, but they can also be great. My concern in terms of the frustration of these theories coming around, aside from people taking it to super extremes, which I guess we don't need to really worry about, only a few people would ever feed their kid Kool-Aid to kill them, right? So maybe Darwin does his thing there, right? But if it creates concern, which then leads to research, that could be a good thing. You're concerned, so you go out and research how this stuff would work. What I am not seeing, and what I didn't see back in the day when this thing occurred, especially when I got the phone call from my friends, was that we had a bunch of press, and I mean, it was official news press about, they were, specifically it was Scotland, Ireland, and inside Europe was going to get hit by all these meteorites that were going to come in from, again, this location. What you have to understand is that in my lifetime, we have been paying NASA and other organizations to do these photographs of space to find alien objects that are coming at us so that we know if we have any threats coming at us. And what they do is they take a picture of space, and then they wait a little while, and they take another picture of space. And they make sure that the picture is aligned each and every night, that as the Earth rotates, and because stars are so far away, okay, they don't parallax because they're so far away. So planets parallax because they're closer. And that's how all the astronomers back in the day found all these wandering stars, these planets. And so they take a picture, and if a dot appears out of nowhere that's never been in the picture before, they have computers that sense this new light that's coming through. And again, everything besides something made out of maybe black onyx is going to reflect some light. And so if a rock comes at us, we're going to see it. And so they take a picture, and everything that's new, and it starts moving across the photographs. Every single evening, they realize that's an object, that's a comet, it's a meteorite, it's a planet, whatever. One of the ways they find it too is that, and this is the way we found moons around planets, is that when a moon obstructs a planet, even if it's not lit well, it creates a depression in the amount of light we get from, say, Jupiter. So normally Jupiter has a certain number of lumens that we get from it. And when there's a big-ass moon in front of Jupiter that's the size of Earth, and there is one, I think it's even a little bit bigger than Earth, it blocks some of the light. And even if we can't get an absolute photoreal thing, which we do today, but back in the day, 100 years ago, we just had these faint light coming from that. And then we started noticing these little blips coming in front of the planets. We're like, oh my God, those are moons. And they come on a certain cycle. We can check it 2 weeks from now, and it's going to be right there. And that's how we figured out that stuff exists. But here's the thing. NASA has always had to admit, and all the space agencies have always had to admit, that they never see anything until it gets really, really close. And maybe that's a little bit better these days, but, how many reports have you heard in the official news when it's scare tactic, doom and gloom budget time for GPL NASA, that all of a sudden a bunch of stuff's coming at us? And part of it's to keep up this PR so that it's year-round. Again, they're approaching the 50th anniversary of the moon missions. There was an article I just posted on the Facebook page about NASA saying that the moon is shrinking. If anything, it's expanding. But what do? They linked inside the article that the Apollo missions took measurements while they were on the moon, and that measurements today are suggesting shrinkage. One, us being able to sense any shrinkage whatsoever would be pretty unbelievable, because you took a 1,200-mile diameter ball, and let's say it shrinks a centimeter. You really can notice that? Now, they say that the sun goes through these cycles, and Eric Dollard's talked about it quite a bit. And again, he was inside the Navy and RCA when he was a child, and he said that they taught him all kinds of stuff about the sun. But they said that they track its emissions, its electromagnetic emissions, and that it goes through cycles. Now, for me, the only thing that would cause an emission cycle variant would be the crust of the sun goes through cycles as well. And so maybe the burning crust, the electrical burning crust of the sun, which is the fusion that's on the outside, it's going to have holes in it. It's going to have thicker areas in it. And potentially, as things swim around the outside of the sun, it's blocking this emission pattern, which means it might cut down the emissions on us, but could also increase the emissions, and therefore everything that's electrical that's around us is getting overstimulated. All the valence of all of the conductive wires that transmit our information, any type of satellite technology, radar, even just radar to radar bouncing off the ionosphere, could be disturbed. And the Navy tracks this because they're trying to communicate with their boats. But if the expanding Earth is based on the injection of materials from the sun, well, then every other celestial body in our solar system has the exact same relationship with the sun, including moons. And moon, we get some of our residual as well, potentially. And so if it were to shut down for 10 years to 100 years, maybe the expansion rate slows down, and maybe, I don't know, there's always going to be emissions is the problem with this idea that it's shrinking. But you might have the force of gravity overwhelms the force of injection, and so you might get some shrinkage. But I just think it's all hoopla PR to validate the moon missions more and more and more until we get to the 50th anniversary. So I get this phone call, like I said, and I said, I just don't think this is going to be true. And sure enough, the dates come around and nothing happens. I believe it was April of the year that it was theorized to occur. And of course, what happens with all of these doomsday theories that have a date? You have publishers rush out to put out these books to just harvest all of the super smart people who believe in all this stuff. And as soon as the date goes and it comes and goes and nothing happens, those publishers are nowhere to be found pumping this theory again. They just go, hey, we sold our books. Joke's on you, Jack. So same thing goes for Planet X. Planet X made so many predictions. I think it even was rehashed for 2015. Never happens. And of course, Planet X and 2012 were two completely different theories with two completely different schedules. When you say 2012, you got to make it happen in 2012. What isn't it supposed to be, the 23rd of December? Like the winter solstice, a couple days after winter solstice, supposed to be over. And of course, that comes and goes and you're done. But Planet X can keep going and going and going because they never quite know when it's going to occur. But I have not seen Planet X on YouTube, and the feed that we've got nurtured at the Smoke Lounge is every conspiracy theory on planet Earth coming through that system. But it's died. It's completely died because none of the predictions remotely came true. But let's talk about the psychological reason why this might be something that is addictive. I think there's multiple levels to it, depending on who you're talking to. For your people that are actually capable, and I have to say, hats off to these con men. It always blows my mind how con men get to become con men. And when I say man, I mean mankind, not just male gender. Because a woman did this one in 95. Now, I should say, there's official science about us having a bunch of planets in our solar system that we can't see, but we feel them in the gravitational models of all of our planets in the system. I think that math is pretty decent. But what happens when someone gets to become the center of attention? You get to become famous among your followers. You don't think Jim Jones felt amazing in his little cult? The fact that he actually called for everyone to kill themselves because here come the feds after him. It's just insane. You don't think David Koresh felt amazing? And I'm not against, again, the theories of him raping the kids in the church. I don't know if that's true or false. I do know that based on the information that has come out after the fact, all those people were murdered inside that compound before it was burned down. They burned the place down to hide all the evidence of what they had done. And they blamed it on Koresh. Koresh shot everybody in the head. It's like, no, that's because some ATF guys got blown away trying to raid a compound with a bunch of weapons. And there's got to be some backstory to that thing that's something we simply have not been told. But they killed ATF guys, and so ATF guys go in the middle of the night. Now they're playing a bunch of really loud noise at the place, so you probably can't hear the muffled shots of whoever's doing this. They burn the place down, and then they get to write the history books, right? Dead men tell no tales. But these people raise themselves up, and they get to become these conspiracy theorist people. They're the origin of the conspiracy. Then you have a group of people that want to feel special because they have some coveted information that the rest of the world doesn't. I mean, think about it. Let's just run a fictional scenario down this storyline. Somehow, I'm out here really late at night, and I'm filming an episode. Night because it's got concealment. And somewhere around me, there's 4 or 5 gray aliens that show up. They walk around the corner over there. They come up behind me, whatever. They're not evil. And they're just looking at me. And we start communicating, and they start saying, well, we think you're a good candidate for telling a certain number of people that we're coming. And we're going to come on this particular day at this particular time. We're going to land in these locations. We mean no harm. This is what our true objectives are. We need you to translate that the best you can into English and let people know. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I'm going to become one of these nutbags. Because what if you guys don't come? Then I'm going to look like an absolute idiot. But I go with it. They managed to prove to me this is going to occur. But it's not for another 45 days or something. So now I'm walking around for 45 days with this knowledge that I believe. I know I met these creatures. I don't do drugs. I don't do any, stuff anymore. I've taken LSD in my lifetime, but I don't do it anymore. So I know I'm of sound mind as far as I know. But maybe I go crazy in 45 days. Shit, I don't know. But I think I've talked to these guys. Maybe they even come and visit me every other day just to make sure that I know it's real. Maybe they have questions for me, and I have observations, and I say, well, if you're going to do that, you should probably do this, and make sure you don't give the bankers and these evil politicians a say. We need to remove them. And they're like, hey, that's why we're coming back. We've been doing this since the Babylonian times. We reset society and get it out of the hands of the corrupt few. I'm like, great, that's awesome. Could you do something to prove something to me? Yeah, we'll do a little tiny thing here. And then Obama disappears. It's some weird thing. Okay. I'm going to be walking around feeling special that they've chosen me to do this. And maybe they've chosen other people too. But I'm one of these few. They're going to bring this message out. And I'm going to feel special. And then when it does occur, oh my God. I get to remain a special rock star that these gray aliens chose first. That would be the case, right? All right. So a con man always needs, they have a couple objectives. One, they want to skate by life. You've got, and again, I technically don't know if this is true or not, okay, but we have a guy in the Philippines who says that his family is the original royal family of the world, that his family ran the entire world, that it was all peaceful and utopian. And he is convincing people to take their debts to him, and he's going to pay it off with this giant treasure he's got, but he won't show anybody the treasure, and he won't dig it out of the ground. There's always an exception to the rule, right? So he gets to be super special to his followers. His followers feel super special when they go over and they believe it. But what's interesting is you usually get these followers and you bring them aside and you talk to them. I saw a documentary. This woman from Los Angeles went over with enough debt to go completely destitute in Los Angeles. And now she lives on his compound. He's feeding her. And she loves it, which is great. She's in a better place now. But the documentary filmed his thugs going into banks over there and roughing people up. And, again, none of us have a big love affair with bankers, so we're not trying to defend that paradigm, but that's what's going on over there. These certificates of wealth are all forged. They don't have any validity in any country. But the guy's created a little compound over there, and he's got his followers. It's very much like all the other folks like that in history. And so there's a giant I feel special moment when you jump onto these conspiracies. Again, most of the stuff that we cover on this show, if not every single morsel of the conspiratorial stuff that we mention and we talk about on the Facebook page in the comment section, nobody's happy that these are true situations. We're not happy that we didn't go to the moon. We're not happy that multiple people took a shot at JFK until they got him. We're not happy about any of this stuff. We're not happy about the bankers doing what they do. It would be an amazing day if we woke up the next day and there's an article in every single international newspaper that says, the monarchs of the world have rescinded their relationship with control. The bankers have all met at some Bilderberg type thing and decided, look, they had an objective. It went south. Everything's out of control now. They never meant for compound interest to destroy everything. They just wanted society to have a challenge so society would push through. They never meant education to get all screwed up. And so they're going to rescind their control apparatus. Money's going to be made sovereign again, and education's going to explode, and we're going to become the best that we can be as a human race. Wouldn't that be great? Doesn't happen, does it? But now then there's this other side of the game, which is theories that discuss the end of the world. I have had countless conversations with Christians that are very fond of mentioning the end of the world. And some of them are extremely good people, and there's this euphoria when they talk about the end of the world as it comes to Judgment Day. And their thing is like, think about it, man. We get to meet God. We get to meet Jesus. All the evil people of the world get taken away by archangels. The demons of the world get slayed. I mean, the demons that are like demons, right? And taxes are over, and it's all over. Basically, pain and suffering's over. Now, what's fascinating about that is, why not talk to an 8-year-old who is loving life? He or she has a dream to become something. Their parents have already had their dreams and either achieved their goals or not achieved their goals, but their kids haven't grown up yet. And they're completely happy that this kid will just go straight to heaven, I guess is the theory. So my question for all the listeners is the following. If you find yourself, and again, don't need to feel bad about this at all, but if you find yourself fond of the end of the world theories, then ask yourself, are you happy? Is this somehow a gigantic relief story for all of the suffering you're going through? And again, life does get harder as it progresses for most of us. Most of us don't have a perfect retirement plan. We don't have annuities. We don't have a bunch of investments. How could we? The economy's gone up and down, up and down. Again, I will tell you guys on this show, I had a company that I made with a friend of mine, and we grossed, I think before it was all said and done, $7 million for the company in about 6 years. But the last million took about 3 years, I think. So 6 in the first 6 years, and then another 3 years to grab the other almost million. Again, I didn't have the accountant do a full total at the end, but I think that the invoices that I know in my mind totaled around 7. All right, do you think I have $7 million in my personal bank account? Hell no. Hell no. Should I have at least $500,000 in my own bank account? Probably. We had the 2008 subprime loan scandal happened at the absolute peak of our company, which destroyed our partners. I mean, our partners were not, our clients, excuse me. Our clients were small clients like Marvel, Yahoo Games, EA, the Ty Warner guy made Beanie Babies, other gigantic organizations, Disney. They rescinded all their budgets. We finished the games that we made for them. A lot of them we just did it. We did everything they wanted, and then they were done. They were off using our technology. Some, we completely re-engineered their website to be, it's a gaming, multiplayer gaming website. We re-engineered it, but because they had budget cuts, they never turned on our version of their product. What are you supposed to do? So what can we learn from Planet X? Well, it's an archetype of a scam, in my opinion. Now, there's two sides to that assertion. One could be that we had decent empirical evidence / claims from credible institutions, in flying quotes. And so when you put it all together, you think you're onto something legitimate. And no one can be blamed for going through that phase. But, the problem with NASA JPL is that we're sitting there thinking, okay, we love to say that everything NASA says and JPL says is a lie. It's not all a lie. Not every single thing that they do is complete BS. They are employing tens of thousands of people, and as much as they do drag out, $23 billion. This article I just read was saying that they didn't mention any of the numbers, which was really funny, but they tried to dismiss this idea that NASA has that budget, and that what they did was they figuratively made the claim that the conspiracy is that we say, as conspiracy people, that NASA has the same budget as the military. No one is saying that. The budget of the military in the United States of America is anywhere between $500 million to $1 trillion, I think, a year. I mean, right? We're throwing all kinds of money at these, the F-35, which is $130 million a plane. Really? Like $135 million a plane? The B-2 bomber, which is $2 billion a pop. That is a lot of money for a single plane. And NASA doesn't even build a rocket that costs that much money. If you take the Apollo missions from 69 to 72, the R&D to get to the first launch in July 19th, 1969, plus all the other additional missions, which you have Apollo 13 in there that had a problem and da-da-da-da, is $9.5 billion. So it's 7 launches, but you have, I believe, Apollo 10 and 8 was supposedly going around the moon. I think 9 stayed in low orbit. So it was a lot of launches for $9.5 billion back in the day. Now, again, I haven't amateurized that up to today's money, but maybe it's got to be somewhere in the hundreds of billions of dollars by the time it's over. All right. I personally have to assume at some point that this notion of a covert space program that's actually doing things is probably true. What they're capable of doing by acknowledging real science and getting rid of all the stuff that we're taught, who knows? Maybe they're flying all over the universe. But if that was the case, again, if they could get to the moon in any way, shape, or form, they would construct the landing sites perfectly. You wouldn't get these shots of the Apollo limb kickstand where the limb was on top of it that's 4 times as big as the real one. When they send us the photographs, say, look, we got proof. The scale's wrong. It's 4x wrong. That's bad. That's super bad math. But they knew if they did real math, then we wouldn't get 4 little kickstands in the shot. We would get a little tiny dot if we were lucky, if any light reflects off that thing. I mean, supposedly it's made of a bunch of copper foil, or it's covered with a bunch of copper foil, so you think there would be a fair amount of light that would bounce off the legs. So we have the burden of reverse engineering the truth, right? So trying to figure out, okay, what could possibly be real, what could be real. Why would they ever greenlight the Orion project to try to put human flesh through the Van Allen belts if they've got this other covert technology? They wouldn't. They would simply lace any additional launches with whatever super technology they have. Again, I suggested in my Making a UFO episode a long time ago of creating a Faraday fabric on a nano-sized level of atomic matter, and then you would be able to fly right through any electromagnetic pole, and you could even siphon the electrical field around the vehicle, which is mathematically prevented from infecting the ship and boiling it away. But you could create little inlets on the outside of the craft to bring in infinite energy if you're by a magnetic pole. But since you're in the universe, you probably are always surrounded by ethereal winds, which you can metabolize into your power supply. Each time a theory comes and goes, like Planet X, we have to learn these lessons, in my opinion, as a society, so when the snake salesman keeps coming through your little town in the Midwest in the 1870s in America, he keeps peddling this stuff that if you drink this, your hair is going to come back. If you drink this, you'll never get sick again. And you drink it and your hair stayed vanished and you got the same illnesses every single year. The guy's a con artist. Now, luckily, we did not have in the phase of the Planet X theory, but brace yourself if this ever occurs. We did have the thing over Russia, of course, but we never have had any major cataclysm in recorded history of a meteorite impacting Earth's surface and causing a giant problem, kicking up a bunch of dust in the sky. I mean, imagine even the smallest meteorite. We've had meteorites hit the ground and hit people and hit cars and go through houses and that kind of thing. But we've never had, like one the size of a house land in the middle of downtown Manhattan and, blow up a gigantic area of a major city. It's never happened in the Midwest. Now, we have that weird explosion that happened in Russia back in, 1908? Which, again, we didn't have a bunch of scientific equipment at the time, but something did an air burst, it looks like, and it looked very similar to sort of a nuclear explosion, except I don't believe there's no radioactive signatures still there or anything like that. So they theorized that thing was a comet made of ice, and that by the time it reached Russia and it was just about to hit the ground, it boiled so much that it exploded. And then you have this ring of fire that went out from the center, burned a bunch of stuff, and then the shockwave from the interior came out afterwards and put the fire out. And so things at the outer edge were burned more than the inside. There's eyewitness testimony of, I think, an old man sitting on his porch, and he said he was just looking at the forest and he saw this gigantic wave of fire light everything on fire, knock down the trees, and then another wave came by and put everything out. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? There's photographs of that, all these trees knocked down. So some people think, well, the Russians were working on some secret weapon. Okay, and why did it take so long to get nuclear weapons supposedly blowing up in above ground tests in the 40s, if this thing did it in 1908? You think Russia would take over the entire world if they had that kind of weapon in 1908? So for me, the whole thing comes down to that old saying, outrageous claims require outrageous evidence. So if there's a person in this world who starts channeling spirits from the past or from some other planet, or they say they got a brain implant that's like some radio station to Planet X, KKRZ, or whatever, then we need proof. We need a lot more evidence that this stuff is real. And, think about us. Think about us as an advanced culture, and we're in some Star Trek scenario, right? We got this prime directive where we're not allowed to mess with other planets until they've reached warp. All right. Well, if we were to make first contact, don't you think we'd have a protocol in place to prove to the people we're making first contact to? Like there was the Vulcans land for Zephyr and Cochrane, and they say, hi, you just went to warp This is where you're going to be traveling among us, and there's a federation in space. There's that whole theory that there's a federation in space and that we're simply joining the rest of the galaxy, and that we need to learn how to behave. We got rules and all this other stuff. We're yet to have the day the Earth stood still occur, right? Or at least the Act 1 where the ship lands in a baseball field in Washington, D.C., or anywhere else in the entire world. You would think if someone is channeling to somebody that this amazing thing is going to occur, they could say, okay, here's a little thing you can tell all of your followers so that they take us seriously, because we're coming. And we're going to drop by and we're going to say hi. And we're going to say, how much gold you got? Look at the sun on May 5th, 2020, and you're going to see Nemesis crawl around the corner. Great. The lady publishes her date, her time of day, just like an eclipse of the sun calendar. We know how much we're going to see from a particular vantage point. Maybe they even say, okay, go to Devil's Tower and look at it, and you're going to see it. Okay, great. Let's have it. Let's have a little bit of proof on top of these gigantic claims. But we never get that, do we? We get hysteria. And the thing is, a con man knows what you want. The snake oil salesman can't sell anything unless he's got a bunch of problems he's claiming to fix. So he can, a con man in the 1870s could be looking at a city in the Midwest. He just looks at it from far away, a couple miles away. Maybe he's on a hill. You can see it from 20 miles away. Or like the Statue of Liberty, you can see it 60 miles away. And he knows someone in that town is losing their hair and doesn't want to lose their hair. He knows that people in that town suffer all kinds of illnesses during wintertime, during pollination time. He knows that people want to be smarter. People want to be like the Twilight Zone, want to be fast draws. And so he comes up with all these benign elixirs and says, you buy this elixir and you drink it. It's not going to happen right away, because he needs a getaway plan, right? It's not going to happen right away, but if you drink a little bit of this every single day, take this little salt pill, sugar pill, once a day, but you take it for 45 days, and I'll be back around, is what the con man says. Then you're going to get this indication in your life, and it's going to be a wonderful thing. Okay. Comes right into town. Sure enough, there's a million things out there. A million people that need all those symptoms to be cured. Same thing with Planet X theories. They know people want to feel special. They know that there's a constant stream of articles that say, hey man, there's meteorites coming, Earth killer coming, blah, blah, blah. And they also know there's people who want the world to end because it comforts their current challenges in life. And they know it comes from Christianity, Book of Revelations, and they know it comes from just people struggling in life. And so they build an archetype that you're more likely to believe because you have a need to believe. Anybody who follows ufology, okay, they know that there are tens of millions of people on this planet that suspect that there's life outside this planet, regardless of what shape you think this place is, and they've got a product for you to buy. My old co-host used to always say, I'm not buying what you're selling. And I think that's awesome. When you coin that phrase in your mind, I'm not buying what you're selling, it gives you an opportunity to analyze anyone's claims, but to not let it into your soul in terms of a belief system until you get some very, very intense empirical evidence that this could be true. Now, I'm going to put a footer on this episode that's about flat Earth. And again, most of you know I'm always equally representing that group as much as I possibly can in every video. Again, we don't have a picture of Earth from space that's real. It's always a composite, as NASA has said many, many times. Again, they blew the blue marble shot from Apollo 17, where they messed up the Red Sea, and then they later fixed it and didn't tell anybody. There's not a single article online why the Red Sea got fixed in that shot. All right. So we're these tiny specky creatures on this gigantic 7,900 mile wide ball. Let's just go with that first. We're not high enough to see curvature. We're not tall enough to see curvature. Again, from my estimations from the resolution in your eyeballs, you're not going to see blatant curvature of this ball, if it's a ball, until you get 80 miles up in the sky. There's 5,280 feet to a mile. So multiply 80 times 5280. That's how many feet you have to be in the sky to see the curvature of a ball that's as big as the place they claim we're on. So every single time I see a meme or an article or someone trying to be really profound with the lack of curvature, I don't see anyone saying we went 80 miles in the sky and we looked down at the earth and it was a flat disk, or it just was flat. Couldn't see the edges. I hear people say, yeah, well, someone did a weather balloon in an amateur situation, and they were maybe 165,000 feet in the air. That's not much. And so you're not high enough to see the curvature if we were to be on this ball. Now, had all of the scientists, flying quotes, if they had said this ball was 2,000 miles in diameter, then you'd have something with your 165,000 foot view of the Earth. Now, there are a million other proofs of this planet being a flat disk that are not part of that particular observation. But for me, if I were to go back onto this flat Earth thing, I would be filtering everything that counteracts what I believe to be the basic altitude that you'd have to be at. You know, I hear people all the time say, I was in a plane and I saw the curvature of the Earth. I have a friend of mine who grew up fairly privileged, and she said that she was always allowed in the front of the plane because a lot of times it was a private situation, or because of the accolades of her family, she was always able to go to the front. And she said she saw the curvature of the Earth. Well, it's impossible. If you're seeing curvature, you're simply seeing it because the windows that make up the cockpit are distorting the Earth's curvature, and you think you're seeing it, but you're not seeing it. The Red Bull guy that jumped out of that pod really high up in the sky, everyone's run the fisheye lens filters on it, and it's as flat as could be. Well, it should be. He's not high enough to see the curvature of the Earth, as high as he was, even though he had to jump out with the spacesuit on. He's not high enough. So we have to be careful when we want to believe something. Stick to the things that are absolutely as conclusive as you can possibly find. And again, the best piece of evidence that anyone can put out there for a flat disk or any type of disputed shape of this planet would be that NASA says they have a ton of geocentric orbit satellites and no one's sending us a direct feed of Earth from space. Again, we should have at least 100 satellites up there that we should be taking pictures every few seconds. Anytime we want a picture of the Earth, we should be able to get a picture of Earth from space. Whole thing, not just a part of it. There was a point in my life when I had a very good friend of mine who was probably to this day one of the smartest software engineers in the world. And I mean that 1,000%. He might be, you know, if there's a top 100 coders in the world, now he's not a John Carmack that makes, you know, video game engines and can drag out every single piece of processor power. That's a whole different level of utter genius. But he was talking to me for a few years about the spherical projection technology / algorithms that wrap flat plane data around a ball. And in his opinion, this is probably 1990, he was saying that that's, at the time, was some of the most gnarly code in the entire world to do that accurately. Take 1,000 photographs from high altitude planes and stitch it all together such that you might have like a weather system, which is very chaotic and sparse and a lot of pixels that create all the clouds, and to stitch it all together so it doesn't look like a bunch of different squares being linked together. And of course, time of day is a big thing. You have to take all the photos pretty much within the same split second. Otherwise, the clouds will move in 10 minutes and you're not going to be able to stitch it together. So I just want you guys to be resilient against con people. It doesn't mean you don't dive in. It doesn't mean you don't live in these rabbit holes for months. And it doesn't mean that you won't have moments in your life, perhaps weeks of your life, where you're like, is this true? Oh my God. Like I told you guys, when I got into Flat Earth, my way of processing the information was to get into it. And there was so much, there was so much data and so many claims of how we know this place is flat. What was it? Eric Dubé's whole 200 proofs. You had to go through the 100 proofs that were written down in the 1880s, and then his extra 100 that are on top of that. And it takes a long time to connect the dots together and go, oh, wait a minute, this one contradicts that one, and science would contradict this. And so it takes a while. But I actually spent, I don't know how many weeks, just letting it be true in my mind. Just letting Flat Earth be true in my mind and thinking about it until I finally connected enough dots where I was like, okay, now wait a minute. If this is so easy to prove, why hasn't anyone proven it? Because all these altitude claims are bunk. Again, space agencies saying they're up there, they're proving that they haven't done what they've said they've done because they can't produce the evidence to confirm what their claims are. That's also really important for us. But in the end, we have to live on this planet. We got to live with each other. Whether the Earth is a tetrahedron, a disc, whatever, a ball, it doesn't matter. I got banker problems, don't you? I got political problems, don't you? We got gun control problems and freedom of speech problems. None of the Earth's shape is necessarily contributing directly to this channel being shadow banned like crazy. I got a ton of, the last 2 episodes I just released was determinism and emotional intelligence was the last 2 I just published at the time of this recording. Both of them got demonetized. Really? Determinism got demonetized? The only thing I can possibly assume, because it was then manually reviewed. They do this automated, every one of my videos gets automated out of demonetization. I have to petition them to be viewed manually. And the overwhelming, I think 95% of my videos, if between 90 and 95% of my videos are monetized. So it's not like I'm hurting. But it's frustrating to say, I'm talking about the most benign things when it comes to world agenda. But every once in a while, I'll throw in a little jab at this lunatic crazy crap we've got in politics going on in the United States. And I think if any reason whatsoever these videos are getting nailed is because I'm putting out the other agenda. And I'm fully willing to take that sacrifice, right? But the subscriptions have just leveled off. It's like 4,047 as of today. But it used to grow by hundreds a month. Now it's just off. And I understand that my last probably 20 videos are very cerebral, very much the kind of thoughts that I like to have and the conversations I like to have. So I understand there's nothing organic about determinism. There's nothing organic about emotional intelligence. But there's moon missions episodes out there. This episode alone should probably grab a lot of eyeballs because of its title. My moon mission ones are, I think, all monetized, which is pretty amazing. But they're definitely not showing up in the organic, suggested videos anymore. I get constant reports in the comments that people have been unsubbed from the channel. Well, they're obviously active users. It's not like they're fake accounts. I mean, what I assume is going to happen is a bunch of fake accounts get created by the Five Eyes, and then those accounts listen to the videos. They're all being digitized into transcripts to try and weigh the overall public consciousness, and they'll look at the counts, and so they know, okay, for instance, 165, the episode 165, which is my second moon conspiracy video, it was the fastest, it's the highest viewed video in the entire channel. But now it went from like 11,000 views to 29,000 views because someone referred it somewhere. and it was just blowing up. Now, the one that's currently blowing up is the Leaving Neverland Part 2, where I defend Michael Jackson against these two kids that are accusing him of a bunch of stuff. That's been demonetized. Both the Neverland Ranch things have been demonetized. Well, that kind of makes sense. We're talking about pedophilia, whether or not he did it or not, and that subject matter is intense. But it doesn't, go to HBO and ask HBO, how many subscriptions did you get on HBO after you released this Neverland thing? It's got to be tens of thousands of subscriptions. They're monetizing the crap out of that content. I mean, imagine I don't know, pick Game of Thrones. I just finished episode 5 of the last season here, which was probably the best show I've ever seen of the whole series. But they have carnage on a level that is unbelievable. I mean, the way they kill people is just so violent and so unbelievable. It's crazy. Now, let's ask the question. Coca-Cola gets offered by HBO. Hey, how'd you like to run an ad in the middle of a Game of Thrones episode? They're going to jump on it in 2 seconds, but what's in the show? Full frontal nudity, which they've kind of calmed down on that a little bit, but now it's got violence on a level that's unbelievable. The last episode I saw, women and children are getting killed. That's all I'll say about that. Of course they're going to run ads on that. Of course it's ad appropriate if the folks want to see it. But what they're trying to do has nothing to do with ads. They're using ads as a mechanism to censor us. So are we over some target? Is it Planet X? I mean, we'll see if this one gets monetized. Well, it should. But all these other videos I have, my video on small town values, totally demonetized. What does that have to do with any problems? You mean you got documentaries on Adolf Hitler getting monetized on TV like crazy? Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I think you feel me. It's good to be filming in the sun. It's good to get some sun, to be honest. If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. It's where you can change from audio to video. There's a locked Facebook group with some of the coolest people on the planet. There's a Twitter account. There's a Patreon page, a PayPal account, and a link to the ever-growing, fully remastered Season 1. So again, if you're a fan of the show, not every single episode of Season 1 will be available because I've retired some of them. The information just got out of date, but probably 95 out of 100 are going to be in there. But a lot of you in Europe are unable to see those videos because of some music disputes, because I was introing the show with my personal catalog of music, and so I'm wiping all that out. I got different theme music for the Season 1, so it's up there. We're also on BitChute. It's a slow crawl on BitChute because it's a lot of pain in the butt to get everything uploaded. But once we get through the first 100 episodes of Season 1, I will simply be able to just sit at home at night and just cue one show after another from 200 to whatever this show ends up putting out. So anyway, thank you for joining. Thank you for following the channel. Make sure you come back because you'll probably be unsubbed at some point. Let me know if you do get unsubbed, because I'd like to know the sort of how aggressive their algorithm is. But anyway, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.